So, ET, tell me a little bit about what you do. It sounds like you have quite the exciting career.
I'm an author, so I write books. I've been writing for about 9 years or so, and I've been professionally writing set for about 3 years now. I started Forgive Us 3 years ago, finished it in 2 years, and now the prequel is on the way.
Oh, wow. And tell me a little bit about these books.
So Forgive Us and the next book, Abandon Us, and there will be a third book, are part of a series called the Odemark series, which Odemark in Swedish is Edemark, which is Wasteland. So it's the Wasteland series. I know, very creative. And they're about various, people, characters who live in a polluted wasteland. So kind of like games like Fallout, except there's no radiation. It's just toxic.
Wow. And what inspired this?
Um, I think just years of experiencing post-apocalyptic fiction kind of influenced me into writing Forgive Us. Forgive Us, one day I just sat down and wrote a chapter. Then I wrote another chapter, and then another chapter, and I was like, you know what, this is going somewhere. This is the book. And then I continued writing until I finished the book. So there's a few inspirations for Forgive Us. There's movies like Wally or the very creepy, totally not a kids movie 9, and lots of games like Mad Max or the Fallout series, which is one of my favorite game series.
And what was the biggest challenge about writing this book and then the book from that you're writing now?
It's really discipline. Discipline is hard to it's hard to work through writer's block, and the way I work through writer's block is generally discipline. I, gather information and inspiration and try to just put words on a paper. And writing consistently for the lengths that a book demands is difficult, especially like when everything's going on, like when you have life going on. So the hardest part for me is discipline. So in order to counteract that issue, I create plans. I design plot lines. I try and like proactively think how I want the story to come about. I try to I call it a Twinkie on a stick. Have you ever seen like toilet plunger on the head with a Twinkie to chase it? It's that kind of thing where I won't catch the Twinkie. I'll just walk forward at least. So whenever I design and when I design the sequel for Forgive Us, I create an entire plot line, right? An entire idea of what I want the book to go to. And the funniest part is I didn't really follow my plan, but I wrote, which is the important part. And sometimes it's funny, characters kind of write the story with you. Um, I've
That's
had
true.
I've had two chapters where I've just hugely diverged from my original plan thanks to a character doing something. So, yeah, the hardest part is discipline.
I understand that. I understand that a lot from one writer to another. So, but yeah. So, what got you initially into writing?
So I think my dad told me that I've always been a storyteller. When I was taken out of school like first grade, so I was like 6 or 7, didn't know how to read or write or do math or anything. And while I was learning how to do, math and read and basically understand the language I speak, I played World of Warcraft. Um, Totally appropriate game for a 6-year-old. I played World of Warcraft, and when I learned how to read, I also got to absorb the world that World of Warcraft presents. And from there, I kind of like began gathering information. Like I watched Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, all those movies, and I played other games. And eventually, I went to StarCraft 2, which introduced me to text roleplay, which is where you sit down with somebody else and you write a story with them, generally in paragraph responses. You and this other person kind of guide a few characters, your characters and their characters through a journey, through an adventure. Um, and then I transitioned to Steam, which is like a gaming platform where you can like make friends and talk to them, but it's really just a place where a lot of games are collected. And then I transitioned to Discord. And on Discord I became really good at roleplay on Discord, really good at writing and making stories and thinking off the top of my head. But I also met my good friend Logeeth, who is from Malaysia, and I'm hoping he'll get his book published soon too. Me and him, we're good friends. He really made me better at writing. I made him better at writing, and he kind of gave me the ability and the confidence to sit down and write a book. And throughout the years of like role play, I tried to start books. You know, I would get to chapter 1 or chapter 3. Mostly I got into chapter 5, but I never really was consistent and decided, this is the one. So one day, about like 2 years ago or so, I sat down and just wrote a chapter about three of us. I just wrote a chapter of a guy, which is the first character is just the guy alone. And then I wrote another chapter of a man and a little girl who's kind of like his adopted daughter. And then after I decided to put a man in a space station. And then after that, I went back to the first guy. And then eventually I wrote a book. So I began writing through roleplay.
It's incredible. And if this were to be made into a TV series or a movie, who would you want to play the main characters?
Oh, that's so tough. I don't actually know a lot of actors, so um, for the first character, Oliver, I would definitely pick a quiet actor, somebody who's quiet, calm, somebody who's a character like the first character, Oliver, would not talk a lot. He would be kind of scarred. He wouldn't be friendly. He would be someone who's like hard, who's cold. Um, so certainly, I don't know any of the names. I was thinking about this. It wouldn't be, I wouldn't have names because I wouldn't know anybody, but I would look for kind of somebody who matches the traits. So London is an older gentleman. He's he's kind of like tired and his joints pop a lot, and he's wise too, but he's also, caring. He's kind of like a dad. So somebody who's like a dad, definitely somebody who will grow a beard overnight. Like, like I don't have to shave a lot, but somebody who will have to shave every morning, somebody like that. And then for his adopted daughter, the character's name is London. His adopted daughter is named Rose. For a character like that, it would be somebody who's like a 9-year old who's bright, who has a lot of energy, but that energy can be focused. Somebody who's willing to learn and be curious, and somebody who's like, oh, you're so innocent and cute, like somebody like that. Like, and then Simon is interesting. He's the one from the space station. He'd um he'd really be a normal person. He wouldn't have experienced a lot of trauma. He'd be more similar to somebody like today, somebody who's in a civilization, a society, in a inside of a structure. He is, a normal man, and you know, he'd be like just just an average guy. Maybe like the basic kind of like 25-year-old actor, someone who's very like a normal person.
And what else are you working on other than your prequel and your sequel?
I'm working on a high fantasy world called Adytum, which is a high fantasy world is like a fantasy world that's not Earth. So the most famous example and my main inspiration is Tolkien's Middle Earth, which is where the Lord of the Rings is centered. So Adytum is really, 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 really big, and I've been working on it for 4 years. Atom is, it has unique cultures, it has history, it has, world geography. Like I hand drew the map. That's why it looks so bad right now. And, it has even languages, which I don't know how to make languages. I'm not a linguist. I'm hoping that over time it'll kind of evolve on its own as I kind of like learn how to do languages. But Atom is ex- just extensive. It's a lot of time, a lot of work, and I hope it's a lifelong project of mine. Um, I hope it's something like when I'm like, maybe like when I'm 50, people will be like, hey, can I use this? And be like, yeah, sure, like make a story out of it. Like, but show it to me. Show it to me. I want to see it. Like something like that. Like kind of like a basis for people to work with and make stories from. Because that's what it will be for me. It's a pot of like it's a bunch of clay, and I get to take from it to mold it, and then take from more, you know. And then other works I'm working on. I have a lot of short stories which I've written over the years that I want to edit and put together to make a short story collection. I have like a zombie one. I have one that's actually in that high fantasy world. I have one that's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. That's the only way I can describe it. There's a lot of masks in it, but not the COVID kind, more like the creepy cult kind. So yeah, that's what I have in the background between the Odomark series.
And where can we find your book?
You can find Forgive Us on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, and Lulu.com. And you can find an audiobook version on Audible, which is awesome because it's read by a British guy and I love his voice. So looks like this.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having
Thank you.
me.
Oh, anytime. You're always welcome.
All right.
Thanks.